Welcome to ACSI's annual conference. I'm Lee Sales, and I hope whether you're here in person or whether you're joining us virtually, that you get a lot out of the excellent program that we have coming up for you today. Can I start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of this land on which we meet, the Boonwurrung and Wurundjeri peoples of the Kulin Nation. I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and I'm sure you all join me in looking forward to our shared future. I also acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which each of you watching are living, learning and working today. ACSI and the Sofitel are taking precautions today to help ensure the health and safety of our delegates, and this includes sanitiser stations located throughout the conference space, so please use those. The surfaces will be regularly cleaned. Where possible, we strongly encourage the wearing of masks, and if you can, please practice physical distancing. You can't have a conference like this without a great deal of support, and so I'd like to thank the major conference sponsors, including Ausbil Investments, ACSI's 2021 major event partner. All of today's speakers will be thanked for their contribution with a donation made to the Cure Brain Cancer Foundation. And if you want to see people's full biographies as well as today's conference program, please take a look at the conference book on the virtual hub or the event app. You can also submit questions for each sessions via the live Q&A. Just click on the Ask a Question button within the sessions screen. And you can also follow and join on Twitter if you want to, at the hashtag ACSIConf22, hashtag ACSIConf22. Now, for the welcome, please welcome Wurundjeri Elder Tony Garvey from the Wurundjeri Cultural Heritage Aboriginal Corporation.
First of all, I'd just like to thank you for that very warm welcome and just say Waminjika to everyone. So Waminjika in the Wurundjeri Wurrung language means welcome. So welcome to all Indigenous and non-Indigenous people here today. Whoa. Okay, we're right to go. All right, I'll just start that again. Thank you very much for that warm welcome. And I'd just like to start the event off with saying Waminjika to everyone. So Waminjika in the Wurundjeri Wurrung language means welcome. So welcome to all Indigenous and non-Indigenous people here today. I'd also just like to say I'm very proud and honoured to be here representing my people, the Wurundjeri Wurrung people out at Healesville on the mission at Corrandirk, where I still live today. My great-grandfather was the last Nurrungita. Nurrungita means the last head tribesman living on the lands. My granny Jemima, which was my great-grandmother, was last to die at Corrandirk 2 days prior to being forced off the lands due to colonisation. The mission was closed in 1926. We got it back in about around 1980. And as I said, I'm living back on the mission with my family, my mum, my brothers and my cousins. The Wurundjeri people are also a part of the Kulin Nation. So Kulin means men. In the Kulin Nation, we had the 5 language groups. We had the Wadawurrung to the west, the Coorong, who were the westerly neighbours to the Wadawurrung, Tunurong to the northeast, Bunurong to the southwest, and the Wurrung of the Wurundjeri territory that we stand on here today. The Wurundjeri lies a bit of cities of Melbourne. It extends from the mountains of the Great Dividing Range, south to the Yarra River, west to the Werribee River, and east to Mount Baw. The Wurundjeri people, they have a social totem. It is Bunjil the eagle. Bunjil represents spiritual powers throughout many parts of Australia. Bunjil taught all the laws about life, behaviour and ceremonies to make sure that our culture would continue for all walks of life throughout Australia. So Bunjil is referred to as the creator of mankind. Bunjil created great people from the land, and that is why we call the land our mother, or the mother of creation. Never can the land be taken away. The land will always belong to Aboriginal people. We are part of the land, and the land is part of us. Our story is similar to yours. Yours is by your chosen faith, ours is by the dream time. We both have creators and beliefs, and ours is Bunjil. It is a traditional custom of the Australian Aboriginal communities to be asked and to give permission for people to enter their land. And today you have now joined with me to honour the spirits of my ancestors, past, present and emerging, who have nurtured the land for over 80,000 years. And we, as the traditional owners of the land, offer you a heartily welcome to the land and hope that together as citizens of this beautiful country, we can build, develop and unite stronger nations for all peoples. I'll just close off in my Wurrung language, which is Wurminjaka, Wandun, Wurundjeri, Balak, Yemen, Kumbibik, which means you're most welcome to the land of the Wurundjeri people. Before I actually close off, I just want to touch on two things. One is the flag here. This flag here is what we call the Australian flag in the Indigenous world, and it's not recognised anywhere in flag books right across Australia, right across the world. You can look up our flag in a flag book, you will not find it. I think that is a total disgrace, an absolute disgrace. For people that have been here for 80,000 years plus, haven't even got their flag recognised in this country. And the only other thing I want to touch on is the changing the date, which Sally Capp last night, made it quite clear that it's, it's just not on. I've had a few meetings with Sally over this, and I know Sally quite well, and that is correct. It's not on. Like on the day of what we call Invasion Day, what you call is Australia Day. Well, the reason why we call it Invasion Day, because on that day there was over 500,000 Indigenous people slaughtered. They didn't have guns, they didn't have nothing. All they had was spears, bundis, boomerangs to protect themselves. So that's why we call it Invasion Day, and that's why it's very important that we change the date to a sorry day, or mourning day, which means the same basically anyway. We can't be celebrating that. I'll go in a little bit more. I had a friend rang me up on Anzac Day and he said, Tony, they're not even flying the flag here. And I said, where are you? And he said, well, I'm in Hillsville. And I said, well, that's why I don't go, mate. I said, I haven't been to the Anzac March for 4 years. And I said, and I've got nothing against the old diggers. I said, my grandfather was an old digger. But he had to lie and say that he was an American Negro to fight for his own country, because if it was Aboriginal, they weren't going to let him. So that's another reason why changing the date is very, very important, that we walk this line together. We don't blame anyone here today. No one here today we blame. It's got nothing to do with that. It's about all of us coming together as one now and walking this line together. 3% of Australia is Aboriginal now. 30% are in custody. Absolute disgrace. Absolute disgrace. And that's due to Invasion Day, when we lost all our people. 90% of Tasmania were wiped out. 75% of the rest of Australia were wiped out of Indigenous people, and part of them were my family. It's not a day to celebrate at all. But anyway, look, thanks for inviting me here today. I much appreciate it. I love getting up here and talking about my culture. I could go on all day, but I know you do have an agenda to go on with. So thank you very much for inviting me here today.
Tony, thank you very much for graciously sharing your history, your knowledge and your culture with all of us here today. Welcome. If you're just coming in, please grab a seat wherever you can and slot in. I'm going to introduce to you now Debbie Blakey, who really needs no introduction. She's well known to you all as the President of ACSI and the CEO of HESTA. She's also a Director at ASFA and the ICGN, and a Wajir Pay Equity Ambassador.
Thank you, Lee, and good morning, everybody. And I would like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of this land on which we're meeting today, the people of the Kulin Nation, and extend my respect to elders past, present, emerging, and to other First Nation people participating in this conference. What an absolute pleasure to gather today in Melbourne, in this room, and to see this incredible group of people who have come together and just know what lies ahead of us, having the conversations, the discussions, and of course, in particular, after the 2 years that we've had. I do also want to welcome our colleagues joining us virtually from around the country. Each year, ACSI members, company representatives, fund managers, and members of the responsible investment community come together to discuss investing with a focus on environmental and social impacts and promoting good governance. These issues are so critical to good long-term stewardship and are absolutely key to creating investment value. The investment value that's helping build and sustain the retirement savings of millions of Australian workers. And that really is what it's all about today. ACSI was formed over 20 years ago with this purpose in mind to strengthen investment value by improving company performance on important ESG issues. ACSI supports its members in investing responsibly and through its research and its company engagement program by monitoring and encouraging action on ESG challenges, and obviously also the opportunities that we have in terms of the companies we invest in. This year marks 30 years of compulsory super in Australia, which is an incredible milestone for such a landmark reform that has supported Australian workers to have a more secure financial future. I reflect often, given my role, and with real gratitude for the determination of the leaders in Australia at that time, who had the wisdom, the influence, but most importantly, the passion to see the introduction of compulsory super. And over this 30 years, the pool of retirement savings has grown so significantly, and the super sector is now an important part of investing patient, long-term capital in markets globally. As long-term investors, super funds invest broadly across the economy and are faced with an ever-growing number of ESG challenges and opportunities with the potential to impact the value of their members' investments. ACSI and its members were some of the first in Australia to focus on responsible investment issues, and it's so pleasing today to see that investment stewardship is well and truly part of mainstream investing. The future holds many challenges for active owners. Climate change remains one of the most significant risks, but also one of the great investment opportunity for institutional investors as the world does transition to that low-carbon future. And as the urgency of the climate crisis escalates, investor expectations are sharpening even further. ACSI research released this week shows the benefits of active engagement, revealing a swell in company commitments to that low-carbon future. 70%, it's a big number, 70% of the ASX 200 market capitalisation is now covered by net zero commitments. Now, while this growth in ambition is truly welcomed, investors need deeper understanding of how companies will meet these targets. Put simply, words are not enough. We want to see strong alignment between the commitment that companies make and the actions that they take. Because it's all too often that the gap between words and action is where we see real risks increase and issues emerge that damage the long-term value of companies. Climate change affects all companies across the economy, and investors will continue to push companies to act with clarity and with ambition to preserve and enhance long-term value. Engaging with companies on how they are managing the low-carbon transition and strategies to capitalise on its opportunities is driving greater action. For investors, this active engagement, underpinned by the evidence-based analysis and research that is so important, is more effective than divestment. Divestment alone will not drive down emissions, and nor will it protect our members' retirement savings that are invested across the whole economy from the risks of climate change. It does take persistent and knowledgeable engagement from our ESG-minded investors to change behaviour and to drive better company performance. ACSI and its members have long called out a lack of diversity on Australia's listed company boards. And in fact, when ACSI was formed, only 8% of board seats in ASX 200 were filled by women. Now it's more than 35%. Now, obviously, that's a lot to celebrate and important to celebrate, but we have a lot of progress still to make, particularly in terms of improving diversity in broader leadership positions. Women make up only 9.5% of board chairs and just 6.5% of CEOs across the ASX 200. So indeed, a lot of work still to be done. Now, many more issues that are of consequence to investors are emerging, and the impact of severe biodiversity decline is one of them, something we are hearing an increasing amount about. And the State of the Environment report released by the federal government last week paints a very disturbing picture of Australia's natural world in disastrous decline. Beyond the threat of permanent loss of wildlife and nature, it can also have a catastrophic impact on society, on culture, and on economic activity. Biodiversity loss is estimated to wipe up to $27 billion from the Australian economy annually by 2050. Now, all of these issues and many more do have a material financial impact on investment returns, and super funds, as active and responsible owners, have a very important role to play in tackling these challenges. Investor engagement remains an incredibly effective tool in impacting environmental and social outcomes and raising the bar on governance. ACSI has supported funds in managing ESG risks in listed companies for 21 years, and ACSI's engagement has led to company improvements on important ESG issues. As an example, when ACSI started its work on improving ESG disclosure by listed companies in 2008, just 31 Australian listed companies provided ESG disclosures that were rated detailed or comprehensive. In 2021, 140 ASX 200 companies were rated in those categories. Now, this is more than box ticking, and I think it's emblematic of the mantra that if you can monitor it, you can manage it. This kind of broad improvement in company behaviour and reporting that ACSI's engagement program is achieving can help lower the systemic risk that all working Australians' investments are exposed to, and support long-term investors like super funds to create lasting, sustainable value for generations of our members, delivering permanent improvements for ESG performance in the companies of the future, and making a real difference to the world that our collective members will live in, work in, and retire into. Over the past 2 decades, ESG issues have shaped our global landscape, and as responsible, long-term stewards, the more that we can understand the impact of these critical issues, the better placed we will be to deliver improved financial outcomes for members. Today's conference gives us the opportunity to hear from a fantastic range of speakers. I hope you've all had a look at the program, because I think it's incredible, the panels and the discussions we're going to have. And of course, the aim is to elevate focus on environmental, social, and governance issues, which is the core of ACSI's mission. Thank you for joining us today. We look so forward to sharing the day with you. And now I'm pleased to introduce a message from Ross Youngman from Ausbil, our major event partner. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's great to see everyone here today, and it's amazing what a difference a year makes when we reflect on where we are today. Last year, we were focusing on issues such as proxy voting, modern slavery, Indigenous rights, with ongoing discussion regarding climate change and global warming. All important issues. However, today the issues have morphed to transitioning out of COVID, watching the change of government here in Australia take shape, and seeing heightened geopolitical risk with the tragic war in Ukraine. And finally, witnessing a more uncertain economic outlook in the face of rising interest rates and supply chain issues. Overall, it all feels very different today as compared to last year. Today, I'd like to touch on climate briefly. It seems that we've finally arrived at a major turning point with regard to climate. After years of policy inaction, the feeling is that some of the urgent issues begging for attention will be finally addressed in Australia. It's an exciting time, and we're hoping future results will match the heightened expectations for action. I must say my personal observations of the election were of the two major parties dancing around the elephant in the room and not wanting to engage on this major issue of climate. The Liberals, because of their traditional stance regarding coal and fossil fuels and their desire to maintain consistency with their base. And a nervous Labor due to the residual hangover from the previously poorly executed carbon price and the feeling that the election was theirs to win if they were a small target. So it was left to the Teal candidates and the Greens to drive into the election with a very focused climate agenda that captured the mood and attention of the electorate. As we know, Labor has come to power, and now it seems it's game on, finally, with regard to repositioning Australia for a new energy future. Two key priorities have been flagged. Firstly, the need for a new transmission grid equipped for the accelerating growth in EV, wind, solar and storage that will take us forward from here. As reported by the ABC, the Australian Energy Market Operator's plan states that 12 billion of investment in new transmission lines should begin as urgently as possible to ensure electricity supply is secure in the coming decade. However, figures in the plan suggest it will take over 300 billion of investment to fully transform the electricity grid by 2050. Obviously, the need for reliable and affordable energy is paramount as we move towards zero emissions by 2050 in the face of coal-fired power stations closing faster than expected, which adds to the need to move quickly to modernise the electricity grid. This should create a huge opportunity set of sustainable infrastructure investment opportunities for super funds and other investors to consider, hopefully offering a good risk-return blend with strong green credentials. Secondly, an emissions trading scheme applying to industrial emitters such as smelters, miners and manufacturers, with a proposed kick-off from July next year. However, it appears the plan is for electricity generators and emissions from buildings, transport and agriculture will be excluded. I guess the devil will be in the detail. So some real change on the horizon, and it'll be fascinating to see how it all plays out. Finally, it's an exciting program today, and as always, a good chance to reflect on ESG issues away from the day-to-day. Please enjoy the conference, and I hope to see you next year in person.